Okay, so welcome all to let's see, our January 30th partner call that we do. So we do these, I've been doing these monthly in advance of our Friday Housing Stability Council meeting. And I just will kind of walk through where we are, what you'll be seeing at Friday's Housing Stability Council, kind of queue up a couple other things, and then open up for any questions that folks have. I also see a solid team here from OHCS if those questions come up. Okay, so in terms of this Friday, we have a bunch of transactions coming forward. We have 4% transaction. We have several preservation pool recommendations. Those are recommendations from the kind of the rehab, I think it's mostly rehab, maybe acquisition pool recommendation that Martin will be bringing. Those pools have now closed, and those I don't think there were really remaining resources, but remaining resources get funneled into the preservation NOFA. And then Ed will be bringing some manufactured park preservation recommendations, and then Becky is bringing a series of recommendations through our Lyft rental program, but these are specifically the resources that we sub-allocated or determined to use Metro selection processes for. So this is not the same thing as the current open Lyft NOFA, but it is resources from Metro. And so she's bringing several of those this week, and I believe this month, and I believe we expect another round of those projects to come forward in March at the March council meeting as well. Then Amy will just be bringing a brief update to the subsidy needs for a Warm Springs project. And then we're really excited to be able to have Claudia, our I was going to say she's new in the MWSB role, although it's been a little while in there. So she has compiled some initial data from that from our MWSB program, and we'll be discussing that as well as kind of where we are and next steps around MWSB usage and the program rollout. And then we did also include in the Housing Stability Council packet just an overview of where our market cost offset fund resources have been deployed to across the state. Those are the resources largely that were provided through the 2022 legislative session, who provided $50 million in resources to be able to address construction cost gaps or funding gaps as projects were reaching the finish line to be able to close. We've deployed those as well as reused a good amount of other OHCS programmatic resources that were returned or undersubscribed, and to a large extent don't really have a large supply of those funds any longer, but are hoping to be able to continue to see project viability from updated modeling going into NOFAs at this point in time. And I guess I'll pause there. Are there any questions about any of the Housing Stability Council materials or agenda items? Okay, so I don't hear questions on those. Let's see, I do, in terms of our fund offerings, we do have open Lyft and PSH right now. I'm fairly certain that the PSH pre-application is due tomorrow. Is that right? Or I think that's tomorrow, or maybe it's Wednesday on the 1st. So for anybody who's wanting to be able to retain the opportunity to apply for the PSH NOFA, please do check out that. Trying to get the link here. The PSH offering information is right here. And the pre-application due date is the 1st. And then the lift pre-application date is also the 1st. And those materials are right here. Our preservation NOFA did close. So we have the team reviewing those applicants. That is seemingly oversubscribed. I believe there's somewhere around 90 million in applications and around 60 million in resources. So those will need to be competitively awarded. So the team is going through the review of those applications. I also want to thank Rob and Noah and the preservation work group giving some early feedback on that funding process or application process this morning. So which is kind of timely to be able to get that feedback in the moment as it's fresh on folks' minds. And so we'll see next steps on those. I do, in understanding how we program our preservation resources and really all of our resources, we are given essentially a biennial budget, so a 2-year budget through the legislative investments. And so we are currently in our legislative session, which has started with Governor Kotek at the helm. And so generally by mid-year, whatever the legislature ends up funding, we will be aware of all of that. And so then expect in the months of July, August, September that we work through engaging with folks around how to best deploy the resources that are put toward OHCS and the funding of both new construction as well as preservation and rehab efforts. Let's see. And so I think I can't remember if last time we spoke, the governor might have already issued her executive orders. The OHCS is really broadly engaged around both the all of the 3 executive orders from Governor Kotek, of course, around homelessness. Largely that work is really centered in our housing stabilization division. But I do know that I would expect some kind of notices coming out about engagement around the homeless services resources. And there was also executive order around production more broadly, with the stated goal of funding 36 or building 36,000 new housing units every year, at least half of which would be affordable units. And so that 18,000 goal for affordable unit production is pretty large, and much larger than OHCS has been able to fund in recent years. So we are certainly looking forward. This week, the governor's budget, the governor's recommended budget should be published, and so we will see how resources were aligned with the executive orders within there, and then go forward through our legislative session and all of the other fund requests and bills that are part of that. We are actively reviewing, I want to say at least 100 bills, I think, in the midst of all of the good work. I guess with that, I will pause. Any questions or other things that you would like to hear or talk about?
Natasha, this is Travis at HDC. You may be getting to this, but I'm wondering if there have been any discussions in the context of funding resources or otherwise with the market cost offset fund being diminished of how to address any issues that are coming up on particularly 4% projects with meeting their 50% test. I know we're looking closely at projects because some are getting a little bit leaner and a little bit closer to whether or not they would meet that 50% test due to less eligible expenses, aka interest bumping up. Have you all had any discussions around that and ways to either streamline helping ensure projects don't get into danger zone, or with additional bond allocation, or kind of any other considerations?
Yeah, I guess I will, and if see some from the production team and others on the line as well. So I don't know, Ty, Roberto, if you have other thoughts. I think for sure, I mean, remain engaged with your production analyst on that, in terms of being able to identify whether there's the need for either increasing private activity bonds to projects to be able to meet the 50% test. Obviously there's a lot of relationship in terms of where, anyway, various project specific details that would influence all of that, I think. And as we have been doing all of our modeling, have assumed that some projects will need or require I guess we're hoping for more minor updates to private activity bond usage within there, so have a little bit of space, but it certainly needs to be understood by the production team so that it can be kind of elevated into our actual modeling sooner rather than later. We don't have, I guess, other gap resources wouldn't help with the 50% test, but so I think it's really a programmatic lens on that. Ty or Roberto, did you want to add anything more into?
No, I think that's the I guess that's the reality that we're facing at it, and I think to the extent that we can, and it may or may not come in time, but allowing a little bit of a cushion in the bond allocation for a project with some anticipation that there could be some increased costs. Apart from that, we don't have other mechanisms to keep adding more. But maybe that's part of what we need to think about, meaning what kind of cushion, or is there a way of withholding some private activity bond proceeds and be able to see if that can help with any project.
And I think too, a lot, obviously this is our first turn of our kind of intentional or competitive, although not NOFA level prioritization of projects into the 4% queue. So I think there'll be some practice and learning that we are experience here. I also, I guess, to loop back on our last month conversation, we did go to the private activity bond committee on January 18th-ish, and were successful in getting the allocation of all of the remaining carry forward. And so I think all forecasting indicates that should kind of treat us whole through the projects that we currently have commitments to, as well as housing authority projects where they're doing their allocations and have anticipated requests directly of committee. I think at the same time, there has been a modest, very small update increase in private activity bond allocation to Oregon, just based on population growth. So we will, I guess, I presume that in the March, April timeframe, we'll have another open window. I think the need to round back with So we can begin doing kind of the on the ground planning around that, but also are working the pipeline that we have commitments to now. Okay, any other questions? I did want to flag also, I didn't mention that in addition to the lift and PSH NOFAs that are open right now, our combined pool, resource pool that has OHTC, and I believe also the preservation of manufactured dwelling park resources is also reopened in the new year. Any other conversation?
Well, the lift application, do you know what time it's due? It looks like it says midnight on Wednesday. Is that accurate?
Let's see. Amy, are you on here? I thought I saw your name pop in.
I believe it is midnight. You can submit it anytime that day, and we'll see in pro quorum when it gets submitted. So it's just by the end of the day that day.
End of business day or midnight? I mean,
Well, it looks like
might
it's
be-
11:59. I would go with 11:59.
Yep, it's due at midnight or at
Oh,
11:59.
a minute before midnight.
Yeah, it's due on
Got it.
that day.
Excellent. I once missed an airplane because I didn't understand the difference between noon and midnight. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I remember when it was due at 4 p.m. in the office, and I heard you'd do 4 because if it was at 5, what if the front office door was locked, all of that stuff. So. Any other questions? I think last month I had talked about they would do engaging with folks around insurance, rising insurance rates at projects, and thanks to all that participated in our survey. And so we're continuing those conversations, and I know we have are engaging with housing authorities this week again on that. So we'll see what comes out of these discussions, but certainly hopeful that there's some potential remedies or things. Hey, Rick, I saw you pop on. You want to say anything more about that?
There's a focus group on insurance on the 1st, and it's not limited to housing authorities. So if you are interested, you're welcome to let us know, and I'm sure we can get you involved. Basically, if you responded to the survey and said that you were interested in a focus group, you should have been invited. Yeah, that'll happen this Wednesday.
So Wednesday at 1, and who should folks still that aren't signed up already want to sign up? Who should they reach out to?
They can reach out to me, and I can make sure it gets
Okay.
to the right person. So Rick Ruzicka at hcs.oregon.gov. Thank you, Micah.
Right. Anything else? Okay, well, I will, I guess we can wrap up this check-in now. I will, let's see, and again, on Friday, join the Housing Stability Council, and you can see more about our MWSB data, although there's a good write-up on that within our packet as well. And stay tuned for more. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.